There's a question I keep coming back to. What is it actually that you can't learn on your own? Because at this point, you can pretty much find any answer, any book, any explanation in about 4 seconds. And a lot of us still feel like something's missing. I'm Kathleen Chu. This is Progress Reimagined. We explore innovative ideas, technologies, and emerging economic models that put humanity and our planet first. This series is conversations with people sharing the kind of learning that you can't find anywhere else. Joining me is Besan Abu-Joudeh. Besan founded the School of Radical Imagination. Live, small group courses taught by scholars, artists, practitioners, no institutions behind it. Before this, she was with Accenture and Kearney. She co-founded Build Palestine in 2016, and she has a degree from Wharton and a master's from SOAS. She left one version of the world to build a different one. And that's what I want to ask her about. Besan, welcome. It's really good to have you on the show.
Thank you so much, Kathleen. It's a pleasure to be here.
I want to start at the beginning. Take us back to the moment you decided to build the School of Radical Imagination. Where were you? What had just happened?
Yeah. So the idea for the School of Radical Imagination first came to me in 2024. It was almost a year into the genocide for the people in Gaza. I'm Palestinian and I live here in the US on Turtle Island. And it was a very, very difficult time. It was a period of my life where the word that I used to describe it is shattered. I felt shattered in many ways. I felt a deep sense of betrayal. I felt unsafe and I felt confused because my entire career was oriented towards social impact. And here I was in this moment, even as one of the co-founders of Build Palestine, an organization that supports social innovation from grassroots problem solvers on the ground, I still didn't feel like that was going to answer the moment that we were in. And I took about a 6-month pause from almost everything career-wise. And it was what I would call now in hindsight, a dark night of the soul. It was a period where I reoriented towards life, where I had to choose life, quite literally, and wanted to find fuel to continue to live in this world that we were in, where all of the illusions were lifted, where the institutions that were supposed to be keeping world peace or supposed to be advocating for equal rights weren't delivering. I needed to come back to this question of what is going to give me fuel. And I remember asking that. I felt like so much of my career had been driven by dopamine, by this striving, by this achieving. And in this moment, I remember reorienting towards love and towards life and towards the human experience. So the School of Radical Imagination was something that emerged slowly. I remember first in this period of reorientation, I landed on education. I was in the social impact space. I was literally supporting social entrepreneurs. I was working with innovation. And that didn't quite sit well in my soul, in my conviction. And part of it also was because my daughter was 3 at the time. And here I was noticing how everything that I was sharing with her was indoctrination. It's all going deep into her subconscious. It's all framing her way of seeing the world. And I was also very aware of that. So I knew I wanted to do something in education. That was the first phase of it. The second phase was hearing the School of Radical Imagination emerge in a coaching container that I was in and not really quite knowing what it was. And then the third phase of it was the moment where I saw the business model. And this process, Kathleen, was, I would say, over 6 months of waiting. And I remember talking to a friend and being like, I don't know what's next. And she just encouraged me to like wait for it to emerge. And sitting with that empty cup during that period of my life was also very uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, now that I'm on the other side of it and building such an exciting project, I'm so grateful that I did.
Wow, that's such a profound kind of personal journey. Can you elaborate a little bit about what you saw that what institutions can't do? Because you came from Accenture with such a prestige background, AT Kearney, Wharton. What is the moment you realize that there are things that institutions just can't do?
Yeah, the funny thing is, when I applied to the Wharton Business School when I was in high school, it was still driven by impact. When I chose to work at AT Kearney, it was like, I want to support governments and public sector consulting. I want to learn so that I can do something more in my career. So all of these institutions that I was a part of, I was going into them with excitement, with conviction, with belief that this is doing good out in the world. And I think the benefit of having attended a place like Wharton, of being a management consultant, working with ministers of foreign countries, consulting to them at such a young age, was I realized that no one had the answer. It was sure there was this ladder that we were climbing, but there was also a facade that from the outside might seem, almost like the Wizard of Oz. And then when you're inside, you're like, oh, more humans.
Such an interesting description. That's also how I felt when I first left my previous work, and I realized it was really just work, and there's nothing more than that. And tell me a little bit about the school, because you could have made this recorded, like the school, the classes, and sold it to thousands of people. You didn't, right? The School of Radical Imagination is live and then cohort-based. Could you help me understand why you make that decision?
Yeah. I mean, I'll preface it by saying it's a business decision. I really believe that the way we're moving is towards more connection. It was during this time I started to flirt with the idea of going back to graduate school for another degree. I had my master's, which was right after my undergrad, and now 15 years in, I was like, oh, maybe I'd like another degree. That would be fun. And it was a $100,000 investment. And I was like, oh, I'm curious, but I'm not stupid to go into debt to do this. But why did I want the degree? Why did I not just want an online learning community? And the way that it existed at the time was because I wanted rigor. I wanted commitment. I wanted people learning beside me. I wanted the mentorship. I wanted to really go deep into these questions. And some people are able to do that independently through their own self accountability. And that's just not the type of person that I am. I really thrive learning with people, having conversations with people. And that was, again, a part of the seed that emerged as the school was this idea that that way that the world was operating isn't the only way. Like there are other ways to go on this journey and to learn deeper. And that's why the school is a place for live cohort-based classes.
I see. Learning together with someone else, with your peers, it kind of brings us back to the kind of the old days, I guess, in a sense. Um, where there are a lot of discussions in the school, in the classroom. It helps you learn from each other's too.
Exactly.
So in terms of faculty, in your school, faculty set their own topics and pricing. What does that mean? What's kind of the business decision behind that? Like, what does that buy you that a fixed curriculum wouldn't?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's the moment that we're in, no one knows what we need to be learning, what we need to be teaching. No one has the answer. And again, it really is about holding a space, creating an ecosystem where something powerful can emerge. And we aren't even 1 year old yet. And it's been so beautiful to witness the magic that's happening in the classroom, the teachers, the alignment. So a lot of faculty members ask, is this the topic that you want to teach? Let's have a conversation about what the course will focus on. And I'm happy to do that as a thought partner, but not as a superior, not as a decision maker. And I always tell them it's going to depend on the students and it's going to depend on you and what your medicine is. And for me, it's really important that faculty members are curious about the courses that they're teaching. You're not regurgitating Econ 101. You are actually asking a question and you're asking it alongside a group of peers. So the school is built on a co-learning model where we believe that the faculty are learners and the learners are faculty. Like the student is a teacher and the teacher is a student. And it's that learning alongside one another that's really important. And one of the perks of teaching with the school is you receive credit to take a class. And that's really important also for the culture that we're building. It isn't that, oh, I'm the teacher and I have the answers. It's like, no, I'm learning alongside you. And that's really fun.
I love that approach because it's very, in a sense, humble. It humbles you, doesn't it? And we are all learners in this rapidly changing world.
And that is one thing about the way online courses are today. I think that there's a lot of, again, the Wizard of Oz, this putting on a performance, this wanting to appear as something who can give you answers, can guide you, know something that you don't, right? And then in order for me to have like 500 people paying me to listen to what I say, I need to build that persona. And I'm very aware of the amount of humility that we are leading with in the school, that the faculty themselves, the people who are drawn to the space themselves are embodying. And Kathleen, what I think is really interesting is it isn't like this was all explicitly laid out in the application process. It isn't like, we have a place on our website where we say, this is what we're doing. The faculty themselves that are gravitating towards the school and the learners that are coming towards the school are all aligned. This is a natural way, a natural desire that we have. And yes, it seems a little bit outside of the ordinary of these traditional institutions, but it's emerging, and it's emerging through, I think, collective efforts right now. I remember when Adrienne Marie Brown came out with Emergent Strategy around 2016, 2017. And that just completely blew my mind. I was like, oh, this is brilliant. This makes so much sense. And now almost 10 years later, it's second nature. It's like talking about 1984 when we can reference the wisdom that came from it. And Adrienne Marie Brown was pulling on learning that came decades before her, and she's citing them and she's naming them. And it's spreading more, this way of being. And I just feel so grateful that we get to be in a community like this, and that we get to play with how do we create a powerful community that is learning and creating and supporting each other.
Let us step back a little bit and talk about the space of impact. You've been passionate about impact. And through your journey, what do you think most people get wrong about how change actually happens?
I really love the quote by Rumi that says, "Yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I am wise and I'm changing myself." And what I find comforting about that quote is that this is perhaps maybe something more inherent to human nature, of thinking that change happens one way and then realizing that actually it happens a different way. It happens by who we are in the world and what we're doing. And I think the biggest thing that people get wrong about impact is the burden of it. This idea that I need to make an impact. And if I don't, then something is missing, as opposed to realizing that we're part of something so much larger and just living in alignment, just being kind is impact in and of itself. And when each one of us is in alignment, the world, the suffering, the pain would be so much less.
So basically, focus on oneself first. in a sense.
100%. 100%.
Mhm. Um, about the school, is there any type of people who shouldn't take the course?
That's a really interesting question. I don't know if there is. I think if you think that there's only one way to exist in the world, if you think that there is one right way, the school might not be the best home for you.
Mm.
But it's inherently about asking questions. It's about the conversations. It's not the teacher who's going to come and lecture you and download you with a lot of knowledge so that then you can say that I completed a course and I am more worthy than I was before. Um, the school really is about who you are becoming and the transformation that you have. And I think even if someone were maybe not willing to look inward, I would even still say that the school, as a supportive community, is a place to support you to look inward and to have that transformation. And then the other thing that I'll say is I really believe in discernment of the students when they read about the faculty, discernment of the faculty when they're working with their students, and just people tuning in and asking questions. I think that's really what the school is. So as long as you know how to be respectful, I think it would be okay to take a class with us.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. What you said about no right answer or no one way to do things is really important and such an important mindset for the world today. We are so programmed to think that there's one right way to everything, but actually there are so many ways to approach different topics, different ways to think about certain things. So about the school, what are the kind of the part that you find challenging that people don't quite see, or what is the hardest part to share the benefits of the school?
I think the hardest part is being patient. The school is something where, so this is my third time founding something. I'm really holding the 10-year vision of where we're going. So how do I hold that 10-year vision and stay excited for the future of higher education and also stay present today when it's harder to attract the learners, when we're still spreading the word, when people are still learning about the School of Radical Imagination? And I think that patience is something that yes, it's hard, but I'll tell you, Kathleen, I'm doing a million times better now than I did 10 years ago when I first started Build Palestine. So I've learned the importance of patience when building something.
Mm-hmm. So 10-year vision, how do you envision the School of Radical Imagination in 10 years' time?
Yeah, so I envision it as the future of higher education. Today, there's this idea of I finish high school, I go to undergrad for 4 years, I get a degree, I go into debt, and then I'm out in the working world. I think in 10 years, that idea of just learning for 4 years would seem really backwards. In 10 years, we're going to have so much more time on our hands. Everyone talks about the future of work and AI replacing humans. And I like to see the upside of that. If we have more automation in our lives, that also means that we have more downtime. And I think that learning is going to fill a deep, inherent human need for us.
Mm.
And add on to the more time and the need for learning, the universal basic income that I do believe is coming for us. I do believe that financially we will not be as stretched as we are today. I see the school positioning itself as a home for values aligned people. The values are really there coming first, where world-class faculty are teaching independently. They don't need to be associated with the Oxfords or the Harvards of the world. And they are having this student to teacher relationship, exactly like what you said, of how education started a long time ago. It mattered who you learned from. It doesn't matter what institution you went to. The lineage is what matters. And I see us positioning ourselves for that moment, for that future of education.
That sounds such a wonderful, beautiful future that I can't wait to get to. See that these days, it's really hard to imagine a beautiful future because there are just so many opposite voices and stories. Um, that's such a beautiful vision. What about the students? What's something a student said that you still think about?
Again, I just continue to be amazed at the magic that's unfolding in the school. It's very much trusting what is emerging. And I remember at the end of our very first semester, so we have an opening ritual and a closing ritual for the semester. These are school-wide events across classes. And we have one person present from each class, their final project, their insights. So then as a learner, yes, you're in your class, but you're getting insight into what's happening around the school. And one of the learners shared after the Capitalism versus Love course with Dr. Laura Basu, they shared, this course literally saved my life. And I keep coming back to that moment, Kathleen, because I do think that the distorted world that we live in is causing so much suffering for us and is directly tied to the mental health crisis. When we cannot make sense of what's happening around us, 1 hour of therapy a week is not going to solve that for us. When there are these systemic injustices that are causing visceral, physical reactions, because we know in our core that this isn't right. This isn't the way to be in the world. And I keep coming back to that moment, and it's reminding me of why we are doing this work and why we are leading with the values. Because yes, I do see this as an ed tech startup. I do see a wonderful market opportunity ahead of us. And we will reach that by leading with our values. I think that the world that we're going into is going to be more value aligned as well.
Knowledge does empower people, right? It frees you. Knowing that the reason why we are put in certain situations, that why we live certain ways, it just liberates, it liberates you. What about people who are on the other side who are questioning? Because capitalism is something that we've learned for so long, and effectiveness, efficiency, all that. So when a lot of people hear imagination, and love, they would think, especially when you talk about capitalism and love, that's almost as radical as one can be. And they would think that's kind of fluffy, right? That's usually the word that describe people who tend to think differently. So tell me about someone who, say, came in skeptical about the school, the courses that you offer. Um, have you ever encountered a student that changed their mind about that?
So I first want to challenge the premise of the question, which is that imagination is fluffy. Because, Kathleen, the CEOs, the leaders of the world, are living very spacious lives. They're going to retreats. They're stepping back. They're thinking big picture. And that is using their imagination. They're pushing their imagination. They're using that muscle to be able to deliver with more power in the role that they have. So whether we're talking about state leaders, CEOs, even leading academics, they are using their imagination and they know the importance of taking the retreat. What's exciting is now when we bring together people who are frustrated by the status quo, people who don't believe in this dominant, superior approach that capitalism has fed us, when we bring them together to imagine what are the alternatives, that's when it gets really exciting. And I think what I have loved most about the School of Radical Imagination and just being on this journey, being with this community, is if I, as Besan, were to teach all the classes at the School of Radical Imagination, I would not be qualified by any means to be the teacher, the leader, the one who knows the most about radical imagination, because who can say that they know the most about radical imagination? But instead, it's again, the ecosystem, the system that we created that's allowing all of these brilliant people, like brilliant faculty and brilliant learners too, to be coming and sharing and discussing and unfolding. I'm learning every day from the amazing community that we have.
I think many of us are kind of used to learning online now, just absorbing information over and over, all different fields. And it's just simply easier these days. You can watch a lot of YouTube videos and you can ask AI. Yet many still feel stuck. What would you recommend them do? Well, I guess taking one of the courses would be one step. What are some of the things that you would recommend them do?
I think the first question here is, what is the goal? What is that goal of education? What's the goal of listening to all those YouTube videos? What's the goal that the person is looking for? And you said that they're feeling stuck. So if they're feeling stuck and they want to feel unstuck, it's not about downloading all of this information that's going to magically get you unstuck. The feeling of stuckness is a very interesting human condition. I'm sharing this based on my work as a life coach, and I've done one-on-one work with clients for, maybe over 4 years now. And you can be stuck for years and have one instance that unlocks for you. So it's not more information will get me unstuck. It's the right information at the right time, delivered the right way. that can get a person unstuck. And I think that that's going to come from another human. I mean, it might come from a book, and I don't want to discount that. It might come from something that you're listening to and passing on a podcast. The chances are higher that it comes from another human. And in the school, it's not going to always come from the teacher. It's going to come from something that unlocks, something that you hear, a conversation that you have, where then you get this deeper insight. I read once that you can think of the human brain as a mansion with 1 million rooms in it. And most people spend all of their life in a small area of that 1 million room mansion. And again, going back to imagination, what is imagination doing is it's allowing us to explore other parts of that mansion. It's expanding what we see in the realm of possibility. And that imagination there's no AI program that can unlock that for you. That's more of the magic. Yes, maybe AI will be a part of it, but now we're really getting at the essence of what it means to be a human.
That's beautiful. That's just a beautiful way to phrase it. And I think we're coming to the end of the questions. Anything that I haven't asked you that you think worth sharing?
I think one thing that I want to share is it's really cool to see how the school has emerged as a place of both science and spirituality. I've noticed that people are not afraid to talk about God, talk about source, and they are in the same breath talking about the research and the evidence-based facts. And I see that as one of the coolest things of the community that we're building, because I think a lot of education spaces really focus on being secular. And then maybe it's kind of more of the spiritual spaces are really just spiritual, but not engaging with the world directly. And I think one of the most beautiful things that has emerged in the School of Radical Imagination is that willingness to do both, the culture of doing both.
Mm. It's such an important way to combine your learnings with spirituality, isn't it?
And then going back to how historically, right, the most brilliant people, like if you think of Leonardo da Vinci or if you think of Ibn Arabi, these are spiritual and scientific because it is a wonder. It is a questioning of the human condition, of what it means to be human, of what is happening in the world around us. That is the fuel behind it.
Wow, beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Besan. Thank you for your time today. It's such a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you so much, Kathleen. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you. A few insights I've gained from our conversation. First, more information isn't necessarily what we need. Sometimes we think about not knowing as a research issue, thinking more reading, listening, and eventually we will be prepared. However, some knowledge isn't going to come that way. Another thing is that early on, we often lose our ability to imagine freely. Being encouraged to be realistic and practical, imagination is often seen as childish or as a way to escape reality. But if you want a different future, you must first be able to envision it, because you can't create something if you can't picture it. If this resonates, check out the School of Radical Imagination. We do have a discount code, ProgressingImagine10, to get 10% off when you sign up. Thank you for listening. I'm Kathleen Chu. This is Progressing Imagined.